Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk ABM with me, Declan, CMO of account-based marketing agency Strategic ABM. ABM is one of the hottest B2B strategies right now, helping companies to win, grow and retain their most important accounts. This podcast allows me to spend some time talking to account-based marketing leaders about their ABM programs and share their insights with other B2B marketers, wherever you are on your ABM journey. Well, today I'm joined by Katrine Rasmussen, who's the CMO of Pixelz. Katrine, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Well, look, we're going to talk about some very interesting things. We're going to talk about account-based marketing. We're going to talk about marketing in general. And we're going to talk about fashion, which is going to be really interesting as well from that angle, because I don't think I've had anybody involved in fashion previously on the show. So let's start off with a number, because we were chatting previously and you shared a lot of stats with me. And you mentioned that Pixelz retouches 40 to 50,000 images per day. And obviously, I had no idea about this world that you live in, that Pixelz operates in. Tell us a little bit more about Pixelz and what do you mean by retouching?
Sure. So I'm sure most of your listeners have probably done their fair share of online shopping, right? And pretty much any e-com fashion website that you go to, all the e-com images that you see there are edited or retouched in some way or the other. It doesn't have to be concerned with making the model thinner or skinnier. It's really not necessarily about that. Most of the time, we don't do that at all. Could be very simple things such as cropping, removing a background, dust removal, and maybe we'll remove it to 2 or more, stuff like that. So it's basically just any e-com image that you see on a shopping website have been retouched in some way. And we do that. We build an engine, AI-powered retouching or image editing engine that will retouch and edit e-com images at scale. So we do that for a number of large fashion retailers. Some of the ones that I can mention are Zalando is one of our obviously very large customers here in the EU. We work with Mango, we work with the bestseller group. So there is an enormous amount of photos that are coming through every single day, need to be retouched. And obviously, the sooner these retailers can get their images online, the sooner they are able to sell their products. And that's where we really excel. Time to market, time to online. For some of these clients, they'll send us their images and we'll get them online in just an hour. So that's insanely important, right? And I think our secret sauce, if you compare it to a lot of the tools that do just AI-based retouching where everything is automated, for us, it's a hybrid approach. Our clients, because it's fashion, it's clothing, it's a bit more complicated. Usually, just any 100% AI, 100% automated, it's not going to work. We still do need that human touch. So our secret sauce is really the hybrid approach where about 75% of the work that we do on average, all the images are done by AI and automations, and the remaining 25 are done by actual human photo editors for that last human or creative touch. So that's what we do. Work with many of the larger fashion retailers and brands in Europe and in the US, and we take care of their images.
Well, I think that's kind of opened a little bit the a view on the world of retouching. As I said, I had no idea that this went on, and we all do our online shopping, and we all scroll through pages and pages looking for whatever we're looking for. So it's really interesting to know that behind those large fashion houses is a company like your own that's trying to standardize everything, make everything look exactly how each brand wants it to look. So you mentioned a few brands there, because obviously I know you've got an awful lot of clients, very, very well-known clients, but obviously you can't mention them all. But you mentioned a couple there, Zalando and Mango, for example. But these are huge companies. And what does it take to win a client like that? I mean, talk us a little bit about how you go about, talking to those kind of customers or potential customers, and how you kind of get into those accounts and get and make them a customer, basically.
Right. So where do we start? And what does it take? Well, I think first of all, and I think anyone who works with B2B large enterprise deals, right? I think first of all, what it takes is some patience. It's usually large, complex deals, large, complex sales cycles. So it's not something that's done overnight. So we work. Well, I think first of all, we have a list of target accounts, talking ABM here, right? We know exactly which companies out there that will be a very good fit with what we do. So we have a very good grasp on that. So we know exactly which ones we're going after, which ones is going to be a really good fit. And then, at least from an internal perspective, the marketing team, we work very, very closely with the sales team to really be aligned on who we're going after, how we're doing it, what are the pain points, how can we best support the sales team to move these deals forward. And I really do think from the marketing perspective, that is one of our most important roles, is to facilitate for the sales team to move these deals and relationships forward, to get some face time, to get in front of them. Because we have found, and this is now we're like back to pretty old school, just B2B sales, right? Enterprise sales, that relationships, face time, getting to know these people, our ICPs, it's definitely one of the most important things when it comes to closing these large deals. So from a marketing perspective, that's what we try to enable and facilitate.
Well, I think we'll touch on that issue around relationships, which I think is a common theme for you, and also, what sets ABM apart, perhaps some of the marketing strategies, is building those kind of very deep relationships. So I'm sure we're going to come back to that. But you mentioned there about, large accounts, that, your target accounts are very large. I think when we were talking previously, we talked about that kind of concept, these kind of big whales, these very, very large companies that exist in your world. And you've decided that is going to be your ICP rather than going after smaller companies. From a marketing perspective, when you're trying to, as you mentioned, these kind of companies, and I'll just rattle some names off that I might know. I don't know, like a Marks and Spencer's in the UK, or John Lewis in the UK, or maybe, I don't know, a Foot Locker in the US, or one of the major retailers in the US, of which there are many. When you're looking at those from a marketing point of view, how do you think about those from an ICP point of view, and what perhaps is the thinking behind why you want to go after those very large whales rather than perhaps trying to make quicker sales with smaller companies?
Right. And that's a great question. And I think that's basically where everything starts, right? And that's not necessarily, or that's definitely not just like marketing decision. This is all very much grounded in business decisions, business strategy. I've been with Pixelz for a little over 3 years now. And I think one of the first things we did when I first started, we sat down, did some in-depth strategy sessions. And when I say we, not talking about the marketing team or even the sales team, it was the executive team, right? Everyone, our CEO, COO, CFO, C-level, we sat down. And I think the very first thing we did was basically just to take a look at the data, right? Because Pixelz we're not a startup. I think we're coming up on 14 years soon. So we have a lot of data, and we had a lot of clients already. But what we did was basically we sat down, we looked at all that data, and we realized that, and I think this is probably pretty common actually, but we realized that about 60% of our revenue came from just 1% of our clients, right? So that we at currently we have about 2,000 clients, and so it means that 60% of our revenue comes from the top 20 clients. So just looking at that data, it became very clear to us that if we want to move this business forward, if we want to grow it, it's really not a volume game. Let's not build like a big self-serve volume-based business, because it's not what really gonna move us forward, because these are not our best fit clients. The best fit clients are that top 1%. They're the ones that don't churn. They're the ones that are really, really happy. And they're also the ones that are bringing in the majority of our revenue. And I think that's where you got to start, right? Who are your best customers? So based on that realization, I think that's when we were like, all right, let's go all in on landing those big whales. And I think it is a difficult decision to make, because it gets very binary, right? Like the volume game, it's easier because you'll just land a bunch of like smaller, mid-sized clients, and you have a pretty good understanding of what percentage is going to convert into business. Here, it's like you might go after a few clients, and a lot of this is going to be out of your control, right? And you're going to be able to close them or not. And essentially for us, sometimes, landing a few clients every quarter is going to make or break our budgets, right? So it becomes very binary. And it's also, so in that sense, it's a bit more risky than just like the volume game. But we could see with our product, with our services, that's really what made sense for our business. So that's how that decision were made. So next thing, and I think that's very important, right? You really got to nail your ICP. And when I say that, I want to make it very, very concrete, right? It's like for us, one of the most important things is that the companies that the brands and retailers that we work with, they got to have a photo studio, and they got to churn more than 25,000 images out per year. So it's like it's a large retailers who has that amount of images. Anything smaller than that, we might take it, but they're not the ones that we're going after, because it just doesn't make sense for our business model. So and then we also knew with the AIs that we've built and the AIs that we've been training for the last, I guess at this point, 10, 11 years, we're really trained on fashion, clothing, accessories. So we knew that's where we do our best work. So that's basically how we nailed our ICP, and also just looking at existing clients, right? And then from there, next thing we did was to really, we did a positioning workshop. We worked with April Dunford's, obviously awesome. We went through the brand script, the Donald Miller brand script. We did all of that. So we nailed the positioning, we nailed the messaging, and we tried to make it a lot narrower than it's been before. Because I think if you're trying to be everything to everyone, right, all of a sudden you're nothing to nobody. So really going all in on like the fashion aspect, the volume aspect, all of those things helped us make sure that our messaging was on point, that our positioning is on point. And then, of course, we interviewed a lot of these large clients to really try to understand their pain points, who is the ICP, who is the decision maker, and all of these things. So I think that's, before you go all in on ABM, just go after a few large clients. I think you really got to have that like a very, very solid foundation of your ICP, your positioning, who is the best fit. So that was the starting point. And then taking it from there, we're building those account lists, working very closely with sales, and then just trying to figure out how do we actually, from there, how do we get in front of them, and how do we close these deals?
And out of curiosity, obviously you've done an awful lot of work and a lot of research, and I think it's fair to say that you know your ICP very well. How big do you think your universe is? What kind of percentage do you think you've got of that universe? And is there plenty more?
Right.
Are there plenty more fish? Are there plenty more whales in the sea?
Yes, there's definitely a lot of whales in the sea, and even think the estimate we did a few years back was that at this point, probably maybe have about 5% of the market share. But we are, and the beautiful thing is that we are the market leader. There's no one out there that has a larger percentage than what we do. But there are still a ton of e-com web shops out there, also very, very large ones that probably has never heard about Pixelz. So, yeah.
And also equally, as it's such a growing, e-commerce, such a growing, ever-changing, evolving market.
Yes, and another beautiful thing is that what we're seeing in the market right now, and if you shop online, you'll have seen this as well. Like a lot of our larger customers, when you go to the product detail pages, right, video is coming, elevated images are coming. They just keep expanding on the content on the product detail pages. So you'll get a much, much better understanding of the product that you're buying. So obviously, hopefully conversion rates are going to be higher, but maybe even more importantly, return rates will be much lower. So a lot of our clients, they just keep expanding on the amount of images, amount of videos, the user-generated content that go up on the product detail pages. So we also obviously focus a lot on upsell, cross-sell, all of that.
And also you mentioned there, Katrine, about, at the beginning you mentioned about artificial intelligence. I think I was reading the other day that a lot of these retailers now are bringing artificial intelligence into allowing people to try on the clothes virtual. I haven't seen how they do it yet, but that's, I'm not a great online retail shopper, so I try to not shop full stop. But that obviously allowing people to kind of experience virtually the clothes, as you mentioned, will dramatically, hopefully, reduce the returns rate as well, which I know is a big worry for these retailers, right?
Yes, that's the idea.
Good. Okay, let's move on to something that fascinated me, and I think this is how I came across you originally. Because obviously different guests come, I find some people come to me, some people recommend guests, but I think I came across you because of all the work that you and your team and your company are doing around flow, I think it's called.
Yes.
And that really caught my eye, and suddenly, my feed on LinkedIn was invaded by everything about flow and your pictures from New York and God knows wherever else you guys have been over the last 12 months. And I think you might have been in London recently as well.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that, because that's a big part of what you do.
It is
part of your ABM strategy. Is kind of, I think you called it. Did you call it experience marketing, or taking event marketing a bit further to experience? So tell us a bit more about experience marketing, and we'll dig a bit more into flow, and you can share with everyone what that is.
Yeah. So flow, as we call it, is our event series. So this year, coming to an end now, we started out in LA in February. Then we went to Berlin in June, then New York in September, and just 3 weeks ago, we took Flow to London. So just taking a step back, it comes back to that thing I mentioned before about more traditional B2B enterprise sales, where like FaceTime relationships probably still the most important things out there, right? You want to buy when you're going to make a big decision that's going to impact not just your business, but it might also impact your career, right? Whether you have a job or not. It's usually like big deals, big decisions for the ICP. When you're going to make that decision, you're going to go with someone that you trust, right? Someone that you know and that you trust. So what we found is basically that really getting to know potential clients, it helps a lot. So if you work in sales, you also know that calling someone up and trying to book a demo, book a meeting, or even just like trying to get someone to go out to lunch with you is not necessarily the easiest thing, right? I mean, because you're in sales, it's probably in your title, and it's probably very obvious to whoever you're calling what your agenda is, right? Want to sell to them. So what we do we wanna give not just the sales team, basically all of Pixelz, the entire team, an opportunity to get to know and build relationships with, well, it's also clients, because of course we invite our existing clients to these events, but we also invite prospects, right? I think it's important to have both, because I mean, who's the better salesman of your product, right? That's obviously that your happy customers. So they're there as well. But we'll put together these 4 flagship events. This year we had 4 flagship events. And what we do is basically we look at where is the largest concentration of target accounts based. LA is an obvious one, fashion. So is New York, here in Europe, London, Berlin, very good places to do that. And then we'll have between 100 and 150 attendees, all coming from our target accounts, existing clients. They're all working in the photo studio. They might be photo studio director, might be photographer. They're some part of that decision-making process in the studio. We invite them to, there's going to be like a welcome party the night before. It's very informal, just a very informal event. And then we have the full day, the day of sessions, speakers, networking, maybe a few breakout sessions where we really get to mingle and to know each other. And then usually we're going to have, we're always going to have happy hour, like a VIP dinner. And we usually end up somewhere fun at 5 a.m. And just having had a lot of fun, right? And I think one of the keys to this, especially for the target accounts that we really want to get in touch with and we want to get FaceTime with, is that it's going to be the marketing team, not the sales team, but the marketing team will reach out and invite some of these key decision makers on as keynote speakers. We'll be like, oh, we've seen you've done amazing work at this company. Would you like to come and share what you've done here? I mean, you're an expert in this field. Can we fly you out? Can we set you up in a nice hotel? Can we wine you and dine you for a couple of days? And can we introduce you to this world of this community of like-minded people? So we'll do that. We'll get and we, of course, we're going to make sure it's some interesting sessions, right, from interesting brands. And then on top of that, we'll work very closely with the sales team and make sure that we invite attendees from existing clients, prospects, all from within the same industry. So it's just a very fun day. And it's like great content, like-minded people, and just a very relaxed, fun atmosphere. And we get to we have about 20 people from the Pixelz team there as well. They get to meet us, hang out with us in a fun, relaxed atmosphere where we're not trying to sell them anything. We're just trying to actually get to know them and facilitate. We also act as facilitators and just making introductions between different brands and the different people. And we talk very, very little about Pixelz. It's not like we're going to have like a Pixelz demo up on stage. We'll talk about Pixelz in a more subtle way. Last thing we did in London was about AI and how we've been implementing AI tools into our workflow. So of course we want to make sure that when they leave, end of the day, that they know who we are, what we do. And recently it's been very important to say that we work a lot with AI. So that's what we do. And then usually we'll get a ton of really, really good feedback, because these the thing about people working in a photo studio, they're a great group to market to. I have to say, I'm so happy that I'm not marketing to marketeers or to salespeople, but these people in the photo studio, sometimes they'll literally be down in the basement. Nobody's really focusing on them. There's not a lot of great content. There's not a lot of conferences for them. So they'll come out and they'll just be so thankful that we're building this community, and they'll have a great experience, a great day. They'll think about Pixelz as something very positive. We'll have done tons of brand building, right? And then, of course, I mean, when sales or someone is going to reach out after the event, I mean, of course, the next day we'll all sit down. We'll have a big spreadsheet where we'll put in all the intel we got from all the different conversations that we've had. We'll figure out what are the next steps. And of course, sales is going to reach out and see who should we try to move forward with? What's the situation here? But we'll have built invaluable relationships, and we will have had a lot of fun at the same time. And just building and facilitating this community also gives us a lot of joy. So, yeah, and we share on LinkedIn, everywhere on LinkedIn. It's a big part of it. I know. Like social selling, yeah. And we get everyone involved, and we try to get all the attendees, the speakers, and everyone to share on LinkedIn, so everyone can go and see how much fun we had.
Well, like I said, Katrine, that's how I came across you through the whole kind of Flow initiative, and obviously the photos, and I think what came across was a sense of as you said, enjoyment of people coming together. And it's interesting how you explained your approach to kind of experience marketing there. There's a couple of words that you kind of kept on repeating. One was community and one was relationships. So I think that's a really huge part of any kind of account-based marketing, account-based engagement program is kind of building a community. And I think what's a little bit different about your approach, which I think is really interesting for the audience, is to think, well, okay, so we've got all these customers who've got an awful lot in common, and we've got all these other accounts that we'd like to potentially work with. We don't know them potentially as much as we'd like to know them, but how can we bring these two groups together so they can talk to each other, and at the same time we can facilitate a lot of conversations? So you're facilitating conversations, you're building relationships, and also, as you said quite rightly, you're building a community. So I suppose the question I've got about that, then thinking about community is and Flow is. Do you see Flow, because obviously you've invented it as a name, as an event, but do you see it potentially spinning off from Pixelz and being a separate brand, or what do you see the future of Flow?
Oh, that's a great question, and it's something that we talk about all the time. It still lives on the Pixelz website, and I guess sometimes it's like, oh, should we get its own domain and like really separate it a bit more? Well, I do think it has potential to evolve into something that is completely separate from Pixelz. But then the question becomes, is that in our best interest? I don't know. So we'll see what the future holds. I think next year we already got our program down. We're evolving. Next year, Flow is going to evolve into, instead of like the 1-day event we've been doing so far, it's going to evolve into 2-day events where we have partners coming out hosting workshops. So it's going to be even more hands-on. And then we're going to try and hit a few more cities with what we'll call Flow Locals, which are going to be just like half-day, afternoon, evening events. It's a bit more just focused on networking and community. And then another spin-off of the Flow events has been Slack community that we've opened up. So it's only open for past Flow attendees, and it's really a medium to be able to continue those conversations in between the Flow events. So that has been a lot of fun as well. And with the fashion world, with photographers, photo studio directors, it's also a place where they'll share a lot of like new campaigns and talk about tech and new developments. So much is happening right now. And so, which is also why we, instead of calling this event marketing, really, it's all about experiences, right? And facilitating that community in between the events as well is also a big part of it. But whether it's gonna be its own business entity, its own domain, its own just its own brand, one point, who knows? Maybe it will.
You never know. Watch this space. It's funny because, Katrine, I was going to ask you actually about how you were facilitating the communication post-event, but obviously you've answered that by saying that you've got a Slack channel now, and I think I've seen some very successful Slack channels that work, such as Pavilion in sales and marketing and other types like that. So it's great to hear. And then touching on the word relationships, which when we talk about measuring account-based marketing, we often talk about the 3 R's methodology of, reputation, relationships, and revenue. Measuring relationships is a key metric in terms of how you're seeing the dial move on your ABM program. But how do you kind of build that trust? Because I'm guessing that trust building is an important part of how you approach your client relationships. How do you see trust in those relationships?
With your
existing more so with your existing customers. How do you, because obviously your technology, how you approach things, what makes you different, your secret sauce, etc.
Sorry.
So how do you kind of go about building that trust with your existing customers?
Well, flow is a big part of that as well, to be honest, because we do invite them out. But I think probably the most important thing that we do, we like to think about ourselves as their partner, their post-production retouching partner, and not just another vendor, right? Yeah. And I think the most important thing that we do is that when we hire, and it doesn't matter whether that's in sales or CS, whenever we hire somebody who is customer facing, who will have a lot of contact with prospects, but also existing clients, all our CSMs, we hire within the industry. At least we do our very, very best to do. Well, CSMs is all within the industry. So we'll hire people who have experience either as a photographer from within as a photo studio environment. When not only do they know Pixelz well, but they know and understand the challenges and the pain points as our clients. And often we find ourselves acting as a consultant, maybe talking to clients about lighting, about studio setups, studio design, all of these things that are not really what we do, but it's what our clients do, and they need a trusted advisor. So that's a big part of building that trust with existing clients, but with new prospect, new clients as well.
Interesting. So I think one thing I was just thinking now while you were talking about flow and measurement and return on investment, all those kind of questions that you mentioned before about your CFO, your CEO, those kind of people might ask you these questions about what's the return. How do you look, if you look at your event or your experience marketing as your investment, which has a cost to it, and perhaps you look at it against other types of marketing initiatives, how does the return on investment weigh up flow versus other methods?
Right. And it's a great question. And it's a complicated one, right? Because it all comes down to attribution and how do you attribute. And I think one of the challenges, or at least one of the things that you've got to know when you do event marketing is that, especially when you do your own events, right? The event is never going to be the first touch point. When you look in, we use HubSpot, we use Stream Data. It's not the first touch point. It's not the first click because they got that invitation from somewhere. It's also, when you work deals this size, it's also never going to be the last touch point because of course that's going to be like a million meetings after the flow event, maybe lunches, maybe phone calls, maybe webinars. There's going to be so many other touch points after an event. So I think it's important to have that understanding it's not cannot compare a flow event to like a paid search campaign that might very well be the very first touch point. So just trying to understand how does flow fit into that buying journey, and realize that you really gotta measure this in different ways. So what I do, I just did a board presentation recently, and what I do is I'll list out our 25 top new clients this year, and I'll just say, okay, so out of these 25, how many came to our flow event? And I think that was 13 or 14. So the majority of the largest clients we've closed this year attended a flow event. So I mean, of course, that's a great indicator, right? We also use Dream Data. It's an attribution tool. You can go into each deal, each contact, and you can see, okay, did they attend a flow event? And you can do tons of different attribution, linear, first touch, last touch, all of these things. And you'll basically see how does the flow events fit into the buying journeys. And I think the beautiful thing about ABM, at least when you don't try to scale it, when you do true one-to-one ABM and you work large deals, it's like you don't need analytics to know whether a client closed right, because when one of those whales closes, you will know, because it's going to be all over Slack. It's going to be announced on the town halls. It's going to be in the marketing meetings, the sales meeting, the executive meetings, right? Because those deals are large enough that we all know about them. So of course, I've got my spreadsheets, I've got my analytics tools, and sometimes I will go in and I was like, oh, did they come out to flow? And it's like, yes or no. But when you work these kind of large deals, you will have because you'll have talked about these deals for probably 6 to 12 months prior, right? You'll talk about them. You know whether they're closing or not. So it doesn't have to be that complicated.
No, it's very, very good point, Katrine. And I think my take on this and the take of a lot of other ABMers is that ultimately, as you said, you're working on target accounts, so you know who you're going after. It's not kind of doing, spray and pray marketing. And equally, you're working very closely with your sales team, your customer success team, even the C-suite. So you're all working together.
Yes.
So ultimately, the real test is whether you're moving the dial as a team, as a team, as a company. And it's not so much the individual success of marketing, but it's actually the company success. And I think that for me is one of the greatest changes when people start doing ABM properly. Yes. Is that everyone comes together, and so there's no more. There's a lot less. Oh, that was me, or I did that, or I made the phone call, or or whatever. And I think that's
and just when we talk about attribution, analytics, and all of that, right? Like the reality when we work with target accounts is that they were all imported into HubSpot. I mean, that's their first touch. That's like sort of like just import. Not going to have that inbound versus outbound fight, because we decided well before we even talked to them the very first time that they're going to be in our CM or HubSpot. Now we're going after them. So what is this first? And there's going to be like probably 7 to 10 different contacts within that account that has been involved at some point, right? There's going to have been like a number of different channels, and it's going to be a webinar. There's going to be an event. There's going to be a ton of like calls, meetings, website visits, pricing. Like there's just so much happening. So trying to claim what was the first touch point of who is it, inbound versus outbound, it doesn't really make sense to us. What does make sense is that we have that common understanding of what is the thing that moved the deal ahead. How can we work together, and how does all of this fit into the big picture? And I'm also very, very blessed with my the chief sales officer, Brian. He's very, very good at giving credit. And he's never the one who will try to take credit. So I also think that's a blessing that we really work together very well.
Well, having a CMO and a VP of sales, having a great relationship is really important, and I think it can make or break many obviously ABM campaigns. Just 2 or 3 rapid fire questions just to finish off with. Obviously, you've been involved in ABM for some time now at Pixelz and prior to Pixelz. But what would you say in all your time is your greatest learning from your journey, from your ABM journey?
I think probably one of the greatest learnings, but that's just working large enterprise deals, right? It's patience. Also just knowing that 95% of your target audience are probably not in market right now, but the moment they will be in market, you want to be absolutely sure that Pixelz is the first thing that pops into their mind. So that's a big learning. And then I think that's probably the standard answer, that sales and marketing alignment, right? Because I think especially in the beginning when we tried some of this, it felt like the sales team thought that we were just like trying to give them a lot of additional work. It's like, fill this out. What's their pain points? It's like this spreadsheet. You need to get all of this intel gathered, and then we can start working. And I think one of the things that we found out, it was like, sales team, they just want to sell. They don't want to like sit down and do like all this account research and trying to make them do that. I think they felt like, why am I doing this? What's the purpose of this? So I think, and I'm still trying to make that very clear that we actually just really want to help you. So changing some of that up and not necessarily having the sales team do this work has helped a lot. And just making sure that we are all very aligned on the purpose and what we want to achieve.
No, I think there's some very, very good lessons there, to be honest, that the audience will definitely resonate with the audience in terms of that. A couple of very, very quick questions just to finish off. And I think you mentioned one of them earlier, but obviously ABM, account-based marketing, and people give it other names, has become very popular in the last, probably last 5 years. It's become incredibly popular, although it's been around for 20 years in its current position. What would you say is probably one of the biggest misconceptions out there about account-based marketing at the moment?
I think the fact that, to me, sometimes it seems like people think that account-based marketing is just all about expensive ABM tools and just like uploading all your target accounts, automating everything, relying on questionable intel from that you don't really know where it even comes from, and then just automating stuff based on that. I don't think that's ABM. That's not true ABM. I'm not saying it's not working. It could work very, very, very well. I just don't think that's what ABM is all about. I think that's all about like really trying to understand one client, one prospect, and see how can we work with their pain points? What can we do to really get in touch with them and get in front of them? So like if the first thing you do when you want to do ABM is to go out and buy like big, expensive, very expensive ABM platform, then I think you're not, then I don't think you'll succeed. At least it's not necessary. We don't have any ABM platforms. We just work HubSpot and tools that we already have.
That's interesting to hear that. And I think, and that's really interesting, that's an interesting important message, that lead with the strategy first. Make sure you're very clear on your ICP, your account selection. As you mentioned, you spend a lot of time on your value proposition, your positioning, your positioning in the market. You spend an awful lot of time on that to get that right, that message into the market. And obviously then you've created a very great, experience marketing platform around that, which is great. Very, very last question, Katrine. So, obviously it's coming to the end of the week. You've had a tough week. You've been, in and out of airports, running around the world doing your flow stuff. And you're just about to shut down your laptop and the phone goes. And it's an old friend of yours who says, "Hey, Katrine, I've got to give a presentation about the morning to my CEO. He's looking to launch an ABM strategy." And that old friend of yours says to you, "What on earth should I make sure I mention in my presentation?" So just before you were about to open a glass of Chablis or whatever your favorite pickle is, what would be that piece of advice?
Right. And I think, and this is really not about marketing, right? ABM is not, I don't think ABM is a marketing strategy. I think that's like, it's a wrong, calling it account-based marketing. I think it's wrong. It's really not a marketing strategy. This is like the business strategy. So I think number one, I think ABM working with target accounts one-to-one through ABM, it's definitely not a good fit for everyone. Just because you're B2B or sell, I don't know, platforms, tech, all of that, doesn't mean you're a good fit for an ABM strategy. Because if your deal sizes are not large enough, then ABM is going to be a terrible, terrible choice. Even though it might be hype and everyone's talking about ABM, make sure that your business model, that your deals, that the accounts you're selling to, make sure they're large enough that it makes sense to roll out an ABM strategy. Because if that's not the case, then it's just going to be a huge waste of time. And you could probably have spent your time doing a lot of other marketing activities that would make a lot more sense for your business than ABM does. So I think that's a first off, right? Just don't try to do ABM just for the sake of ABM. Really got to make sure that it's a good fit for the type of business that you're running.
Well, I think that's great advice to finish off on. You can shut down your laptop now and have your glass of Chablis. Katrine, thanks so much for sharing your your ABM journey with us today, and I wish you and the team there at Pixelz every success for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk ABM, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Feel free to rate and review this podcast. Thanks so much for listening.